All right. We've got 3 beautiful families represented up here. First of all, you guys, this is not easy. It looks easy. They make it look easy, but other people can tell you that we're on this panel. It takes a lot of courage to get up here and speak vulnerably about what we're learning. You know, I think everybody we've ever asked to be on a panel is like, oh, I am definitely not right for this, you know, because we all feel like, oh, I don't know, I'm getting my butt kicked many days. We all, you know, it's very vulnerable. And I love that about this community, that nobody tries to position themselves as like, oh, we know all the things about marriage or dating. Like everybody's like, I don't know, we're trying to figure it out with Jesus, help. So, all right, well, I want to introduce you guys to these amazing people. So we have, most of you guys know the Vetters here on the end. We've got the amazing Vetter family. Look at their cute picture. Evan and Jenny, they're awesome kids. We'll come back. I have questions for you all. The amazing Mitchell family over here, you guys. Clarence and Leslie. Look at their beautiful babies. So fun. We've got the Acostas over here, Juana and Ray, and their beautiful family. So fun. All right, so I want you guys to get to know a little bit about these guys. I'm going to start with Vetters down there. So Evan and Jenny, you guys transplanted here with children. Okay, from the East Coast, right? So I am sure moving to LA with young kids, there were a lot of concerns about, can we do this in LA? Can we raise happy, healthy, whole children in LA? Is it possible? And you're doing it. You guys have an incredible family. You've got incredible kids. So tell us just a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I'm Evan, my wife Jenny, and then we have 2 kids. Our son Charlie is 14, and our daughter Evie is 11. So we're kind of like entering into a new phase of parenthood. The game book kind of changes like every time they get a little bit older. You're like, oh, I thought I knew how this worked, and then it's like the rules got thrown out, and now there's new rules. And so that's kind of, we're in this like new phase parenting-wise. But when we moved here, our kids were smaller, and I think we kind of thought that we were doing things backwards. Like, it felt like most people move to LA in their 20s, and like, then they meet someone, and then they have kids, and they're like, I gotta get out of this place with my kids. And we were like, let's move our kids to that place. And I think that there was some intimidation for us to some degree of like, can we raise kids in Los Angeles? Like, this is a much bigger city than we've ever lived in. We're from North Carolina on the East Coast, and it was just a really different, place when we came to visit to see if we even wanted to move here. And I think probably the biggest thing that was an encouragement to me in that journey was, one, Jenny just on the front end was like, this can't just be a good move for some of us, it has to be a good move for all of us. And I work in the film industry, so that was kind of what was motivating the move to Los Angeles. But her saying that to me kind of like really hit me like, oh, we can't just make this decision based on like one of us or what's going to be good for one. It's like everybody's going to have to thrive here. And the second thing that kind of stood out to me in that question, Jen, was just something my sister said to me when we moved out here. My sister said, the thing you have to remember is that this might not be about you. And that really kind of hit me in a really positive way, I think, because I realized then, like, oh, it's not like this perspective of this will be good for me. It's that this really could be amazing for my kids in ways that I don't even understand. And it has been. It's been really awesome for them. They've had opportunities that they never would have had any other place. And so I think for us, that was one of the big things about moving here and kind of getting over that intimidation, was realizing, wow, this isn't just about us. This is going to be, even Anna's words to me were like, this could be about your grandkids. You have no idea. So just kind of having like a much broader view of things, I think really helped us when we made that move.
That's so good. Let's talk about Clarence and Leslie next. So you guys went from being told you might not be able to have kids to having 3 beautiful babies in a short amount of time. Yes. Tell us about your beautiful family.
Sure. Hi, I'm Leslie. This is Clarence. Just to start, one dream that was always planted in my heart from God was to be a mother. I always had the number 4 in my heart. We had 4 pregnancies. We have 3 children on this side. We got married at 30, and we knew we wanted to be done by 40. So we had them back to back. Eleanor's 6. She'll say she's 7. She'll be 7 in January. Clarence we call him C4. He's Clarence the 4th. He's 4, going on 5. And the little one, Josephine, just turned 3. So we did have them back to back. We were done by 38. But yeah, just as Jen mentioned, part of the testimony was I was told due to I had fibroids, and I was told unless I had a really tricky surgery that we wouldn't be able to conceive. And I had spoken and read so many accounts of women that had the surgery, and it can cause scarring tissue, and then they can't have kids anyway. So we just decided we're just going to pray and trust, and we did. And so we went on to have our 3 children. I think that's it.
So good. All right, brace yourself for this, okay? I want you to imagine for a moment having 2 3-month-olds, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, 2 5-year-olds, and a 12-year-old. Now we know they're really saved, okay? Because this is where Juana and Ray found themselves several years ago. They have this absolutely beautiful family that is that's a blended family, a combo of adopted and bio kids, and just so incredibly beautiful. You guys, tell us, first of all, how did you survive that? I want to know that. Start there, and a little bit about your family.
So I'll jump in and then I'll hand it off to my wife. It was this amazing. Thank you, by the way, because we sat down and started to really think about our journey and how blessed we are. So thank you for that. But this is true. So we are a blended family. So my wife and I got married when I was 24, 2007. Yeah, okay, good. She's reminding me of everything. We're gonna do this with the kids too. So, but I had a daughter. We met. She joined our family. Then we had 3 children of our own, and we got a call that said, "Hey, somebody from the family was in need." And so right away we jumped in and said, "Hey, how can we help?" We end up, bringing 3 kids into our lives, which were 3 months old, 2, and 5. Okay, I keep having to check my math with her. And
You have permission to get it all wrong after having that many kids all at once.
I feel terrible when somebody asks me and I have to go down the line. But my wife was amazing through this time. I worked night shift. She was a stay-at-home mom. There was days where we'd have to high-five each other. Hey, you go to the other room, I'll go to the other room, because we'd have both in the room, and one would wake up the other one, and then the other one would wake up, and we couldn't sleep. So there was just a lot going on at that time. But my wife was amazing through that process, and I'll let her share.
Thank you. So I really, honestly, I don't really know, except I just felt the need to help. That was it. I just knew that this was something that wasn't like a question. It was just like, are you on board? Okay, good. Let's go do it. But as far as navigating a family, it took a village. My mom helped me a lot. There was a lot of tears, but through it all, it was good. Like I said, we had a village to help us in the beginning with all the kids, and my kids really adapted right away. Like they were like, "Oh, my brother and sister." So, yeah. I mean, I never was dressed. I could remember that, ever. I wore his shirts all the time. I'm like, hi. But I mean, I think about it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, how in the world did we do this? There was a lot of creative moments from going from 4 to, 7. So, yeah.
The first year, we were late everywhere. So, late everywhere the first year. I don't think we were on time for anything.
I feel like you get a serious pass to be. But now the ages of your kids, they're all mainly teenagers, right?
Yeah, so we have 2 10s, 12, 14, 2 16s, and 23. So one is left, so now we're down to 6 in the house.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. Well, Clarence and Leslie, I want to ask you guys this. Early on, you guys had to manage some, several of you've all had to manage a lot of unexpected challenges in your family. You guys are having babies during COVID. You had health issues going on. You had a baby come early. You had an unexpected diagnosis. There was a lot you guys were managing in those early years. And I'd love to hear kind of how did you work through that? How did you guys manage that?
So we were just saying who's going to go first on this, right? So really, it was a big challenge for us and still is, honestly. On the diagnosis side, our son, our little guy, he started really having kind of developmental delays early on. Didn't really start talking and issues with eating. And so, and this happened right when COVID started. So he was 1. He turned 1 right at the beginning of COVID. So everything was on lockdown, and then what's going on with our kid, right? So that was the big challenge. And he was diagnosed autistic. That's not our confession over him, but that's actually ended up being very helpful because the diagnosis provided resources, right? So sometimes the diagnosis can actually be a path to healing. But for us, it was a really big challenge because when you have kids, you have these, dreams and visions of what parenting's gonna be like and what you want for your kid. And it was a total kind of left turn curveball. And so for us, just, how do we manage that? We're still learning how to manage it, if that makes sense. It's that kind of combination of, walking in faith, but then it's like, God, like, what are you doing? Like, what's really going on here, right? And so it's still really honestly a journey, for us to kind of work through how we're managing it. The best thing we can do is make sure that we stay together in terms of being united, being close, eyes on God to keep us united. I would say that that's the core. There's much more there, but that's the core of how we're managing, I would say.
I'll share too. I wrote down 3 points. Last month, I practiced during the month of Elul, which is the last month in the Jewish calendar, and it's all about forgiveness of self, of others, and of God. And every day you pray, you work through forgiveness. And I had to forgive myself. I realized I was blaming myself for things I shouldn't have been blaming myself for. Like, did I not take enough vitamins? Did I do something wrong? I had to forgive others. The funny thing is, God's efficient. I realized there was someone that I had offense in my heart still towards, and out of nowhere, they show up at church. And I was like, God's efficient. I was like, okay, yeah, it's clear. I've worked through that. And the last one was with God. And it took me a couple of weeks. And I knew I had a lot of sadness. And then I realized I wasn't just angry, I was furious with God. And I share that because God can handle all of our emotions. And, the anger was because we had prayed all the prayers, been walking with God all our lives, and just to have this curveball was hard. And so I worked through that, and there was like a whole reframing. And like you said, it may not be anything about you. It's like he pulls you back. This is generational, and we're just getting started. We don't know 5 years from now, 7 years from now. And I will say another point is testimonies. Like, we were told we couldn't have kids, and now we're living in the middle of answered prayer. It may not look exactly how I imagined, but I don't know what God's going to do through each of our three children. And so to hold on to those testimonies, and even in the physical, it may look a certain way. It's so interesting, like, the consistent message I get is that he's going to be okay, everything's going to be okay. And one small example is From 18 months to 3 years old, I took him 3 times a week to speech therapy and eating therapy with very little progress. Now, mind you, it was during COVID, so he is in speech, and the therapist has a mask over her mouth, so it's like, okay. But on the very last day, I was like about to just lose it. I walk out to my car. Had never happened before. Someone had left a newspaper on my windshield, and it said, "Miracles still happen." And it was the only time, it was the last day. And so those kinds of words and messages that we continue to get, and I hold on to those. And then the last one I wrote down is just, like Clarence said, is walking this out with God, because I found myself, even though my dream had come true of becoming a mom, it was starting to feel like a nightmare. And I don't know if you've had that happen where it's like your dream starts to feel like, but I realized I have to do this with God, because when your dream does come true, the dream he's planted in your heart, you're being stretched into such a new place, a new territory, so much bigger than what you came from. You can't do it without him. And if you try, I mean, this is how it works. The enemy just has all this wiggle room, and that's how it starts to feel like a nightmare. So I had to pull it back in and be like, every day I have to do this with God, so.
Yeah, I love that. Would you explain a little bit how you guys, because I feel like so many people can probably relate to this. Like, how have you managed to contend for healing and break through with what God wants to do in your family, but also manage the present reality? Like, I feel like sometimes people get so swung in one way or the other. They get so like, oh, that's not true for us. And you're like, you actually do need to manage that, because that is currently true, but also that's not God's truth. And so we're hanging on to that. So how have you guys managed to kind of do that?
It's a bit strange. It's kind of like occupying two places at once, if that makes sense. It's, how there's the notion of, kind of having one ear always to God and one ear to the world. That is how this feels like from a walk standpoint. So on the kind of one ear to God, it's leaning into the testimonies of others, leaning into our testimonies, leaning into what we're hearing from him when we pray. We pray and spend time with the Lord, what we hear from him during worship. But then on the other ear, it's like, what can we do today that's going to help our kids? And that's something that every parent is dealing with. That's like just universal, right? So for us, it might look one way, and for other parents, it might look a different way. But it's, what can I do today? Because then I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be able to say the same thing again. What can I do today? So today, I kind of alluded to this earlier, I was really resistant to this diagnosis because I thought it was going to be this stamp on him, or that means that's what his life's going to be. But it actually just opened up a bunch of resources from the state, to help give him therapy he needs, to give the support he needs, the support we need, because they provide support in the house as well for us. So it's like there's the practical step of what could I do for my kids today, and then there's, all right, God, like what are you doing big picture, right? And then trusting that God is taking us to an amazing place, big picture, and kind of letting him have that, but then God give us the strength for today.
It's so good. Yeah, I love that. All right, Ray and Juana, I would imagine that you guys have had to walk your kids, some of your kids, through a lot of how do you process grief and loss, and with the blending of and so many kids and teenagers and all the things. I'm sure there's a lot of big emotions in your house and a lot you guys have had to overcome. Tell us a little bit about that and how you've been able to help your kids in that process and help them stay connected to Jesus through that.
Well, so not just my the adopted ones, but my oldest daughter, my stepdaughter, she was going through her grief with her mom also, and she would have these times where she would feel like really sad, and we would have to, walk with her through it. He would, talk with her and talk to her, and we would pray for her mom. And then, so when our kids came, my son Daniel, he is 5. Well, he was 5 at the time, so he remembered, his mom. And so I remember at the very beginning, he would always ask about her, like, how is she doing? Am I going to see her? And then he would just be a normal 5-year-old, just, okay, that's fine. As long as I would say, oh, she's doing good, you're going to talk to her. But then there came that time where they asked us to adopt them, and communication was completely cut off. And I would always want to check with him and how his emotions were doing. And he cried a lot, and I would pray with him. But there was this one particular time, and I would always tell him, like, come talk to us, come say, how you're feeling, because I never want him to deal with it by himself. So I remember this, I was sweeping in my dining room, and he was like 7 years old, and I don't know, there was nobody at home. I don't even know where they were, but it was like a God moment, because he came to me and he said, he was leaning against the wall, and he said, have you ever been sad? Has your heart just been sad? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, my heart's sad. I'm happy, but I'm sad right now because I miss my mom. And I remember, I'm like, I know the feeling, because my dad had just passed. And so I knew the grieving of a parent. Like, you long to be with them. You love them so much, and you just long to be with them. And I turned to him and I said, I know how you feel. Like, I miss my dad. And I said, but let's pray. Let's ask Holy Spirit to comfort you. And so he said, okay, and we asked Holy Spirit, we invited him, and we asked him to be the comforter, and we asked him to protect his mom wherever she was, just to protect her. And he walked away happy after that. I mean, there was tears shed from both of us, but he walked away just having that comfort, and that knowing that God was protecting her. So, yeah.
I know something you guys have really tried to cultivate in your home is even with that story you just shared, you guys have been really good at just owning your own pain and letting your kids see how you have to go to God for your own pain, and teaching them, that, like, I can't do this without God. And same for them, like helping them come to the presence of God, just saying these things are all way too big for any of us, and helping them connect with God. I think that's really beautiful. Yeah. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would share that we're open with being vulnerable with our kids. So, if there's a moment that we have, like a family member calls, we'll bring the kids in and say, hey, this is what we're going through as a family, and we need to pray. Even those moments where we have to stop, and there may be 100 things going on with all kids, but there's times we'll just stop and just start to worship and invite God in, and we're just trying to teach our kids that, hey, when you're going through something, because we're all going to go through something, this is our strength, and we're not going to sit here and act like we got it all together. We're going to pause, throw the flag, and say, hey, let's sit down and let's call down heaven and get that strength back so that we can fight whatever we're fighting.
Yeah, so good. I love that. Okay, Evan and Jenny. First of all, they're both freelancers. How many freelancers do we have in the room? Okay, so you'll appreciate this. Not only are they both freelancers, but they said yes to what they felt was the call of God to also homeschool their children while they both freelance from home. How's that working out? Tell us about that.
There's a lot of togetherness. A lot. We are OG homeschoolers. We're not COVID homeschoolers. Not that there's, there's kind of a difference. Some of us were like forced, and others we did it voluntarily. So when our oldest was in preschool, he was like an intense little dude. We are both firstborns, and he's a firstborn, so there's a lot of like firstborn energy up in there. And the feeling of him going to school, I was like, he's going to go to school. Like, I'm going to get a break from this kid. And it really scared me that I felt there's nothing wrong with that feeling in small doses, but my doses were too big. I was like, you gotta go. Simultaneously, we had some friends that were starting a private school where the kids would go 2 days a week and then be homeschooled for 3. And homeschooling was on my list of like, I'm 0% doing that ever, ever, ever. Like, those folks are weird. But they had invited us to like a thing, and we really resonated with it. They talked about hours of exposure, or hours of influence is what they said. Like, the number of hours per week that your kid is at school is this, but if they're at home with you, you have this much more influence. And that really resonated with me as someone who was like, you have to go away. So we prayed a lot about it. In that same time, Charlie was in like a lottery to go to this very fancy little elementary school, and he got in. So then we had these like 2 really big possibilities for him. And we prayed a lot. And one of the things that we thought in that process is like, what if we move to Los Angeles one day and I need to know how to homeschool? Like, what if that's a thing? Because he was 5, so this was like 3 or 4 years before we moved here. So it's really neat to look back on it now to see like, oh, Jesus, like you really prepared us for this thing. So we still homeschool. We still do it in this like weird hybrid way that not everybody does it, because there are a dozen reasons to homeschool and there's a dozen ways to do it, more than a dozen. When we moved here, we paid to join like a homeschool community, so it was like instant friends, because that is one thing about parenting that I'm sure you guys would say too, is like if you don't have community, if you don't have people in your corner, like it's harder than hard. Like it's already hard, but if you don't have your people, it is, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it without Jesus and without people. I don't know. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's good. Anything you'd add to that?
I think that the other thing that was really interesting for us about homeschool is that it doesn't have to look one way. I think that a lot of times you just get a preconceived notion of like, well, this is what homeschool is. And really like...
I thought homeschooling was like long denim skirts. And like very religious. It is not.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that like, no, there's a lot of different options, and actually California has a lot of options that they don't have in other states. So like we were able to get the state to help us be in the charter system, and then they'll actually give you funding that then we could say, oh, well, this particular child of ours is interested in X, and they're actually going to pay for us to like do things that he's interested in. So I think on the whole, the big surprise for us was that it wasn't just like something that we were scared of, but it was actually, again, another opportunity for our kids to do something that they wouldn't have had we not stepped out in faith and moved to California. So,
well, and a final note, that oldest child who was like the super intense child that I was like, go away, he now goes to public high school. This was his first year like homeschooling away from me, and it's like lament. Oh, hey, buddy.
He's waving in the back. He's like, that's me.
It makes me like so happy that he's so happy in this school that we like prayed a whole lot about, that he got in. It was a lottery. And he's like the happiest, and I'm super sad. So, like, look at God.
and I mean, I think the other lesson in short for us was like every decision in life, you're always praying about things and asking the Lord for his guidance and things like that. But I feel like with our family, education has been one of the things we've prayed the most about. Interestingly, for some reason. So, for us to see those prayers actually play out in ways where we're like, oh, the Lord showed up and look at what he did. The opportunities he has now in the school he's in is incredible. So it's just been really cool to see that.
I love that. Okay, let's answer this one briefly, because I've got some other questions I want to get to. But you guys all have very, very different children in your home. I mean, all of them are different. How do you adopt your parenting styles to really different kids, and how do you connect with each one? Does somebody have some input on that? Because I'm sure all the parents in this room can probably relate to that. Anybody?
I'll go. I just, you get to know your kids if you spend time with them. So taking that into consideration, like one example, our oldest, she's such an extrovert. The worst possible thing is if she misses any conversation or anything. And so, we decided we were going to discipline differently than how we were raised. And Clarence calls it 80s parenting. So when you do that, like, you can read all the books, you can do everything, but then when you're in the situation in the moment, you have to decide. So back to Eleanor, she's such an extrovert. The way we disciplined her was a timeout. Like, that was it. Like, that was the worst possible. Whereas, one of the others, they'd be like, cool, I'm going to take a nap. So you get to know each kid and figure it out as you go along. And like they said, as they grow, things change, and it's just kind of a never-ending. There you go.
Yeah, so the only thing I'd add to that is, parenting, I think about things in the context of kind of music a lot of times. And we like everything to be a rigid plan, kind of like classical music. If you play it the same way. People have been doing it for hundreds of years the same way. Parenting is jazz. There's a tune, right? And there's a melody, but you know what? You got to improvise. You got to change. It's always different. It's jazz, right? So that's what it's like with our kids. Each kid is who they are today. And then tomorrow, they're a different kid. And then we got 3 versions of that happening. Y'all got 7 versions of that happening. It's amazing, right? But so it's like, what does that kid need today? That's always what I'm trying to think about, right? Who are they today? And something I've also found helpful, we talk about discipline, is because I'm a pretty big guy, right? You realize if I'm standing over a kid, that's scary, right? So there's some also practical things for me, just kind of knowing how to relate to your kids. So I always try to get on their level, like literally on their eye level. And then, in doing that kind of softens my heart, especially when I'm upset. Because I'm like, oh man, this kid is 2 years old. Like, let me settle down and let me do something that's appropriate for this kid. So anyway.
Yeah. That's good. Anything else you guys would add to that in terms of like, you mentioned wanting to parent or discipline differently. Let's hit on that. Like, if there's anything else, because I think a lot of people relate to that. They want to discipline their kids maybe differently than how they were raised. And how have you guys managed that? You talk about getting eye level and that kind of stuff, but what else? Encourage the people that are also on this journey with that. 2 buckets. I like that.
So, I mean, I guess the way I think about it is, we grew up being, spanked as kids. Like, get a spanking for, whatever. Go out to the street, get in trouble. And it was rare for me, but it was something that I wanted to make sure that, is this something we really want to do with our kids? This is, not the 80s. It's not 80s parenting. And so, I don't know, what I found is that and my parents actually did this well, even though it was in the context of corporal punishment. It was like, you have, okay, what do we need to correct to make sure that they're safe? And so when I was a kid, it was like, hey, don't ride your bike in the street. You rode your bike in the street, okay, you might get a spanking, right? That was the 80s version. But for us, it's, okay, well, how do we make sure you're safe, even if you don't understand why what you're doing isn't safe? And for our little guy, he, with his challenges with communication, we really want to make sure he understands what we're talking about. So this whole notion of spanking, even though we didn't want to do it, he wouldn't understand why we're doing it. And so it would really freak him out if that's what we did. So for him, it's just like, hey, we're going to make sure that there are certain things that you're supposed to do or not supposed to do, no matter what. You don't need to understand why. Here's, like, we're going to, keep you straight here, right? So there's safety, kind of, discipline and structure. And then there's, kind of the other side of that, which is how to help them grow and mature into a ultimately productive citizen in society, but also a person who loves God, a person who is able to love a future spouse, a person who knows how to relate to community, right? And so I kind of look at discipline in terms of, how do we make sure that we give them the teaching and understanding to be safe and navigate this world safely? And then how do we think about, teaching them to learn how to live in community, learn how to walk out life in love, learn how to love God, right? And so I think understanding kind of discipline in the context of those 2 buckets is kind of helpful to think about, okay, how are you going to craft discipline for your child? right? And again, each kid is different, right? So you have to do it one way for one kid and another way for another. But I think having that paradigm of those two buckets is helpful to make sure you're not losing sight of what the goal is.
Well, so I would add to that, like, how much have you guys had to rely on the Holy Spirit to figure out how to parent these children, these feral children we have?
It's constant.
What does that look like?
It's constant. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, every day my prayer is just, Lord, show me how to be the mother Eleanor needs today, how to be the mother C4 needs today, how to be the mother Josie needs today. And then I find starting my day that way, then I have the eyes to see and the ears to hear in the moments. And also, it was kind of counterintuitive because I did grow up with disciplinarians. I really got this clear message from the Lord to, when I want to go harder, go softer. And I consider myself a very nurturing, patient person, but still, especially because you'll have that child or two or three that really challenges you in ways you haven't been challenged. And yeah, just when I feel myself go harder, go softer. So that could be if my immediate is like time out or not this or whatever, go softer. And I think in that moment, you'll get clarity as you're praying what that looks like. So that's helped me a lot.
Just one thing to add to that, and I'll give other people a chance to talk. On that go harder, go softer, especially we have little ones. We don't have any teenagers and older kids yet, so y'all can tell us if the game changes, right? But I'm sure it does. But, when they're really little, you're their everything. Like, you're their example of love. You're their protector. You're their provider. And that's their world. And so kids typically, they kind of want to make you happy. They want to know that you love them. And so this notion of going harder is kind of, I realize it's not as necessary as I thought or what we had as kids in the 80s. Kids want to do good. They want to know that they're a good kid. They want to know that you love them. And so, there's a whole lot more coaching you can do than you think, rather than in being soft, rather than feeling like you have to have a hard line and hard, strict rules, because, that kind of defeats the purpose of relationship. Again, unless it's about safety, like don't run into the street, right? But the majority of parenting I found is, developing this relationship that's going to last a lifetime, right?
One thing I was going to jump in and add on that, when you said like kids are different and maybe they can, because they're different, they'll also affect you differently as a parent. So like this kid, you're like, oh, you're perfect. But then maybe the other parent is like, that kid is driving me crazy. Like, what do you mean that kid's perfect? And I think that the thing that has been really challenging for me as a parent is to not let that get into the relationship with Jenny, where I might be like, oh, we're going too hard on that child right now. And it might be that her relationship with that child is different than mine. And so she's like, this has really gotten under my skin. And I just need to not have to have the rest of that conversation right now. And, I've let that admittedly lots of times go, well, okay, well, I kind of see it differently than you. And it actually put a wedge in between us where, oh, now I'm kind of on the same side as the kid. And it's me and kid versus mom. And that was a terrible place to be. So bad in so many ways. But I just thought that that's worth saying, and that the relationship here is actually the primary relationship in the household for our family. And I'm terrible at that sometimes, admittedly. That's my dirty laundry for sure, is that I will let it become us against you sometimes. And I'm constantly working on that, because ultimately that's not how we can be the best parents if we're not on the same team. So.
And I just want to add on top of that too is something we didn't do at the beginning was that we now we kind of tag team the challenge or the obstacle or the discipline. So if I feel like she's going a little too hard, I'll step in and I'll take this one, or she'll do the same for me. So it helps us kind of high five each other. Hey, I'm at my tipping point right here, and I need you to jump in and because we're not going to see it clear when we're in that position. So, and I think another thing too is praying. having that prayer of just being a better parent has helped me where situations have come, and when I'm done, I'm kind of like, I'm like, man, I'm impressed at how I handled that. Because, that was one that could have easily, that could have gone south quick for that kid. But, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. So praying and just,
All 7 are still alive. Hallelujah.
So I heard a helpful, it was a helpful meme on TikTok, to be quite honest with you, but it's worth sharing. It was someone talking about parenting, and they were saying that, on day to day, you each have different capacities, right? So you don't each need to be at 100%. Together, you kind of need to add up. You saw that one?
Yeah, is it Brene?
Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, but together you need to add up to 100%, right? So, at the end of the day, hey, where are you at? Oh, I'm at 30. Okay, I'll be the 70, right? But then the next day it might flip-flop, or it could be seasons, honestly. It could be if there's a health issue or something else going on. That might last like months, might last years. But to know that, marriage is a super long-term thing, right? And so, but just checking in with each other to say, okay, well, where are you? What is your capacity? And then if you're at a place where combined together you're not at that 100, and then you kind of figure out what needs to change, right? And that's a broader family conversation. But I found that helpful.
That's good. Ray, you mentioned something I wanted to talk about. You went into parenting determined to really break out of like generational cultural norms and not be the emotionless macho dad, but to really be present and affectionate with your kids. What has that looked like? And what would you say to other men in the room that are trying to do the same thing?
Yeah, so I'm raised in Oakland, California. That's where I'm from, and I'm proud of it. My dad and the way he raised us was a little rough, and I remember that there was things that I was passionate about that I wanted to get into. It was weird. I remember coming home and wanting to cook something, and he was just kind of like, "What's up with that?" I remember thinking when I became a parent, I don't want to be that dad. I want to be able to support my kids. Whenever they want to get into something, I want to be their biggest cheerleader. I was determined that, and this is a funny story. I want to share this, so I get a chance to share it now. When we were chatting with Jen, one of my sons, when we were playing baseball, so I was so proud that both of my kids wanted to play baseball, both my boys, and one of them swung a bat and then just twirled the whole time, and just kept twirling like the cartoons, and I remember thinking to myself like, man, I wanted to hit it and run, but then that was just him, and I laughed, and I thought it was funny, but my dad would have been like, hey, come here, like, what happened? But I remember thinking to myself, like, that was a proud moment. Like, that's my son, and whatever he's into, I'm gonna get there by his side and love on him. So that was my determination. Was, hey, not be that guy that gets challenges my kids, but just supports them no matter what. Because we definitely if he wants to be a cook, wants to be a songwriter, wants to be a singer, I want to be able to support that.
I love that. Okay, Evan and Jenny, I want to ask you guys, because, in our conversation, I love that you guys have really worked to create a really safe anti-fear philosophy in your home around sex. And I think that's really helpful. Can you tell us how you've cultivated that? Really trying to break away from just all of the taboo-ness around sex and trying to really create just a healthy environment for your kids to really grow up in freedom in that area. So help the people, help us. How have you done that?
It's all Jenny.
Is he going to come in again?
Yeah, is my son going to walk in here again while we say this? That's going to be very awkward.
Lock the doors, lock the doors.
Yeah, lock the doors. So, no, I really do. I feel like Jenny had a really kind of just crystal vision when they started to kind of get of age, where we were like, we're going to start to need to have this conversation. And we decided to have that conversation with them when they were both 8, I think it was, yeah. Which seemed really early to me because I grew up in a Christian home, and I think I also came out of like the purity culture time of that world, right? Where it was like, oh man, sex is this thing we don't talk about, and it's kind of this behind the scenes thing that's happening. And I think when they were starting to get older and we realized we needed to have this conversation, that was kind of like the first part, what you said, of just like, this is not a fear-based situation for us. Like and I think as a family, we look at a lot of decisions that way of like, well, what's the not fear decision? Like, we don't want to make decisions based on fear. And so we wanted to kind of elevate that idea with them as it related to like sex and understanding what it was, and trying to not have a fear-based perspective of it where it was like, no, this is a really good thing. This is the context in which it's, designed by God to happen, and this is something that we want to be the first person to have a conversation with you about it. That was really kind of the other thing about that, I think, that you really kind of pushed out there that I thought was really good, was just, we don't want to have them finding out from other people. Jenny called it, what was it, the pumpkin? It was like, yeah, you got to explain it.
Charlie asked me a question in a week where he'd been to a pumpkin patch, and we'd seen like pumpkins in various stages of like green versus orange. And I was like, do you really want to ask your green pumpkin friends about this thing? Because they don't know. Like, I'm an orange pumpkin. Like, ask me the orange pumpkin questions.
I love it.
We just didn't want their worldview or their understanding of even just mechanics to be shaped by green pumpkins. We wanted them to feel like they could ask us questions at any time, because I think growing up, like, we had like the talk, but it's not one conversation. It's like 45,000 conversations, and sometimes they're at dinner, or sometimes they're in the car, or sometimes it's with like the boy kid when the dad was going to talk to the boy kid, and you've got to talk to the boy kid. Like, it's a lot of conversations, and you have to like fix your face and answer the questions, because if your face looks like disturbed, they are not going to ask you again. They will ask the green pumpkins. And so we wanted to be safe for them. We wanted to be the ones they asked the questions of.
So good. You mentioned too something about, is it the bricks or
Oh, yeah. So the way it's played out as Charlie's gotten older, actually, is that as he's entered into public school, we were having conversations about things he was probably going to experience. And I'm trying to figure out what do I need to get ahead of? Like, if I want to be the first person to have a conversation with him, wow, there's some stuff I probably don't know that's being talked about out there, and I've got to find it out and then have a conversation with you, because I want to be the safe place and be the place to actually talk about that. And the thing that I was trying to explain to him, because he was like, well, should I be afraid of these conversations or whatever? And I said, listen, here's what's happened over the last couple years. We've been building a tower of blue bricks for you, and this is kind of your worldview right now. And so it's mostly a blue tower, but you're going to go to school and you're going to meet other kids, and somebody's going to hand you a red brick, somebody's going to hand you a yellow brick, somebody's going to hand you a green brick, and it's now kind of, we believe you're old enough and we trust you that you can look at that brick and say, do I want to put this on my tower? Do I want to learn from this brick and be like, oh, I didn't know people thought that. That's interesting. Or do you want to like throw the brick away and say, I don't even need to know that? And it's kind of on you now to figure that out. So that's kind of the philosophy we took as he got older, was like, now you're actually going to be exposed to some things that we might not have total control over, but we believe that we've built a good foundation, over the last couple of years, and so you can handle that.
It's so empowering, right? Versus controlling. Here's what you have to believe. Here's what you have to, so good. Okay, I have more questions, but I want to put up on the screen, because I know you got questions. We have a QR code if you want to submit a question to this amazing panel. You can scan it really quick and send in start typing in your questions. Okay, Clarence and Leslie, what advice would you give to young couples in this room who are considering having kids? Or wondering, can we do it? Should we do it? And what can they start to do now to prepare for that?
Sure. I actually just had this conversation with my daughter's librarian. She's been married a couple years, and she's around kids all day, sees all the personalities, but she asked me what I thought, which was interesting. And I asked her, well, do you want children? She said, yeah, I've always thought, I do, but it's LA, and, kids are expensive, and the personality she's around all day, you don't necessarily know who you're going to get, right? So, yeah, I told her, though, start with one. Like, if it's been a desire in your heart, then I think it's probably there for a reason. And you and your husband can start with one, and I think it'll be clear if you can handle more. But if it's been a desire, you at some point have to take the leap and do it and have faith, and you'll figure it out. And your child, it's true, no matter how many kids you're around, when you have your own child, whether it's birth or adoption, or they are your child, and something kicks in, and you'll be okay. And then also, I would just say, start asking questions, which I know that's happening now. But one example I remember, we love to travel before kids, and I thought, well, that's not going to be able to happen when we have kids. We were on our honeymoon in Beijing and saw a family with like a 7, 5, and 3-year-old. And I asked them, how do you do it? And she said, this is pre-COVID, but she said, we started young because your kids are joining you. Like, bring them into your world, have them do what you're doing. And then she also pointed to grandma. So have help, it helps, right? But yeah, just start. So I remember that. And so as you go around and you see like a family or whoever it is, like with kids, and for some reason there's something they're doing that might inspire you, you have questions, just ask, because many parents I think will be willing to have conversation if they have the time. So.
Yeah, I have a few things. On the community point, just really that there's your family and there's your chosen family, right? So, when I think about some things that I think we may have done right, my best man at my wedding is the godfather of our kids. One of her really great friends is the godmother of our kids, right? And so they don't live locally, but they're interceding, they're praying for our kids, right? So, there's your, even if you're kind of birth family or unchosen family, so to speak, can't help you. Maybe it's because they're older or they have their own challenges. There's your chosen family, there's your church community, there's your friends, and the people that you have around you now that are the ones that you can trust on. Allow them to come along the journey with you, right? Especially if you're single, it's not too early to be thinking about that. The next thing I would say is do premarital counseling. Do premarital counseling. Do it. It really helped us.
Or do married counseling if you're already married.
100%. Do counseling, right? We did it before we got married. There were some elders at this church that we had been attending at the time, and they've been married for 50 years, right? And it was part of their personal ministry to do premarital counseling for couples. And they hit us with the questions that we didn't even know we should be asking each other. And to kind of go through that, a little bit of a crucible in a good, loving way, to go through that, it helped us talk about how many kids we want to have, how do we want to parent, things that were on our radar, but we didn't know how important they'd be to kind of have alignment beforehand. And then also just, you could start praying for your kids now, and you can start praying for your grandkids now. A fact I heard recently that was really interesting is that, a child at 20 weeks, I think it is, already has a girl at 20 weeks, already has all of the eggs in her ovary she's going to have, right? So a woman carrying her daughter has got their grandkids like in the womb, like there, right? So this multi-generational thing is a real thing. And, we believe in a God and follow a God who's outside of space and time. So you can be praying not just for your kids, but pray for your grandkids, pray for your great-grandkids. And that's something that will help kind of orient your mind on, okay, well, what am I doing now? How can I be behaving now to prepare myself for that future? So, yeah.
It's really good. Okay, we have to be super brief. Super brief. Okay, these are popcorn fast answers. Okay. What encouragement would you give to people in the room who want or are considering foster care or adoption?
I would say go for it. I was sharing the story with Jen when I come home from work, all my kids line up at the door and all the dogs line up behind them. So I'm just full of love. I get home and it's just a love fest from my kids. And, I would say that, there is some financial stuff that we have to make sure we plan for, that we're wise. But the love that's in our home that comes from our kids is just something you can't measure. And it's hard to explain, but I get to experience it every day.
So good. Leslie, what would you say to the mamas in the room that are feeling just buried in the baby stage?
Just that it's a season. So I've had times where I'm out and I'll see someone staring. One of the kids might be crying or whatever, and they'll walk up and say, my kids are teenagers or out of the house, and I miss this stage. So it always helps to ground me that if it feels overwhelming right now, it is a season, and you don't want to miss the moment. So I might have said earlier is I be here now, because in the present moment, that's where the gift is. And right now, they want to stack blocks. They just want to hug. If they're crying, it's fine. This morning on the way here, there was literally spilled milk, and there's all this stuff. But just that it's a season, and we've said many times, support. So that trusted friend, if you don't, you can let someone here know, I'm sure. And just someone that you can confide in, to know that you're not alone, and appreciate these moments, because I feel like this is almost like a parent initiation quote I keep hearing. It's, the days are long, but the years are short. I've heard so many parents tell me that. And it's true, the days might seem long, but then you look back and it's like every year just goes so fast, and then the babies are gone, so.
That's good. Anything else you guys would add to, can it be done? Is it worth it? Can you really raise healthy kids in LA? Is it worth it? Should the people do it? Should they have children?
All right. I'm going to tell a tiny story. When Charlie was really little, I was reading a book to him, and he stopped me from reading the book, and he said, "Dad, your words are going in my nose." And I looked at him, and I was like, that's weird. So then I go back, I'm reading the book. He stops me again. "Dad, your words are going in my nose." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. I'm going to keep going." Third time, he stops me. "Your words are going in my nose." And then I was like, "Do I have bad breath?" And he was like, "Yes, your words are going in my nose." And it was really funny, but it was also this crystallizing moment for me where I realized, oh, my kids have a really different perspective from me. They see the world through this lens that is totally different than mine. And I think that the things that God's really are important to him are relationship is one. So it's the relationship between your spouse that's a relationship that you're going to learn more about yourself. You're going to learn more about the world around you. And I think the other thing that God's really is important to him is refinement. He loves to refine us. And I think that he uses relationships to create refinement. And so my kids, just as much as my wife, are an opportunity for God to constantly be refining me and reflecting back to me oh, I need to work on this thing, or oh, God has something new for me to do this week, or whatever it might be. And so when I saw that he saw the world so differently from me, I was like, oh, this is one of the reasons that Heaven's Kids is the best, is that it really is a refining thing for all of us.
So good. So good. Okay, we have tons of great questions, you guys. You guys are so good at questions. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. So let's answer these quickly. What do you do when you don't agree on a discipline situation? When you're not on the same page, how do you do that?
I think, we've matured since we've had so many situations with all of our kids. We know how to give each other the look, and one of us knows okay, I'm gonna take a back seat to this one. And I think that's important that her and I are on the same page on that. And I kind of spoke about it earlier. Is just sometimes, if I have, there's one of the girls giving Juan an attitude, I'm not really, that doesn't really affect me as much as it does her. So I might come in and be able to see that a little differently. So maybe, hey, I got this one. I'll take care of it. Really helps us out. So it's knowing each other and saying, all right, you go ahead and high five this one because I'm like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I would say we do our best not to disagree in front of the kids, right? So if Leslie's doing something and I don't agree, I'll do my best to just chill, let it play out. We could talk about it later, no problem. but having unity in front of the kids we found to be very important.
It's good. How do you handle potentially unwanted in-law influence on your children? Y'all be asking the real question. Or family, you know.
Yeah, I have magical in-laws, and I'm not saying that because he texted them and told them to watch. But I really do, like, they're the best. But I read somewhere, so this is not really related to my experience, but we do have other family that I'm like, oh, you don't always get access anymore. I read somewhere that as a grandparent, it is what were the words? It's like a privilege to have influence over my child, but it's not a right. So we are their parents, and we get to make those choices. And if you're saying or doing something that's contrary to those choices, like, your privilege might not be as accessible to you. Yeah.
Where's the lie? I mean,
Yeah.
that's good. That's real good. Okay. This one's for Juana. How would you encourage somebody else that's in the room that maybe is trying to manage parenting in a blended relationship? You know, a blended family. What would your encouragement be to somebody that's trying to figure out how to navigate that?
I would say, like for me, when I think about that, when I first met Raymond and he had a six-year-old, she was 6 at the time. I mean, I was the youngest of the girls, you know, I just had my nieces and nephews. So coming into the situation and not knowing how to handle that, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but I would say to rely on other people that have walked through that. I often sought a lot of counsel from people that had kids from, you know, that were their stepkids, and I would get advice from because, man, I was like, I don't even know about this. But I would, like I said, I would rely on a lot of people. I would ask questions, a lot of questions. I would try to build a relationship with Anissa, is her name, with Anissa, because she's like, who are you? You know, you're coming into me and my dad's space, and then you're just gonna make some rules. So I had to learn to be like, okay, just because I have big feelings, she also have big feelings. So I had to build my own relationship with her, and I had to have like, okay, we both have big feelings. Let's talk through this. We don't need your dad here. We need to talk. And through that, we were able to go closer in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I'm going to answer one of these because I have the mic. You guys can jump into this. How do you raise strong-willed children? I'm going to answer this because I have 3 strong-willed children, and I was the strong-willed child. That I think, you know, in the 80s there was a book that was just like breaking, you know, whatever the quote was, like break the will, but not the spirit. And that was kind of all that was taught, was just like use force to break that will. And so I went into parenting of really trying to figure out what do you do with a strong-willed kid? And first of all, you're gonna need the Holy Spirit because every kid's different. But, you know, I think for me, learning to really see their strength not as a problem, but as a gift. And that was the biggest thing, was I always believed something was wrong with me. Always. My parents didn't put that on me, but it's just a belief I picked up because it felt like what was expected of kids was just to be this compliant, never, you know, ask the hard questions, never, you know, try to voice your opinion. And I was going to do that. So I felt like something was wrong with me. So really trying to go into it of, hey, your strength, your passion, your commitment, your dedication to this thing you want, or whatever. Like, that's actually a gift. That's not a problem. And so helping them steward that, you know, and part of, like, when my kids were little, a lot of how we did that was, oftentimes strong-willed kids feel like they have no control over their life and they need to feel powerful in the world. So giving them choices. So instead of you always making the choices, letting them choose. Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? Do you want to go here or there? Do you want to wear this outfit or that outfit? You know, I remember Malika, she was so opinionated about what she wanted to wear that we would let her pick, you know, hey, Monday through Friday, you can wear whatever you want. And if you knew her in that time, it was neon stripes and glitters and all the things and, you know, but mommy and daddy get to pick on Saturday and Sunday. Like, you're just trying to let your kid have wins where they can so they don't feel like you're constantly disempowering them. So that would be my advice. And then stay connected to the heart. And you know, really value their leadership, call it out on them, speak it over them. You guys, anybody add to that?
The only thing I would add, I was at work and my wife sent me this meme, which, you know, we still laugh about today. It was a meme that said, that moment you realize your kid is going to be the CEO of a company or the leader of a gang. And
100%.
that's one of our kids will remain nameless because they're in the room in there. But I think to Jen's point, I think it's just cultivating that leadership is what you got to do, is really explain the whys to them, because I think when you know, they're just so strong, you gotta sit them down, stop them, and really, you know, get through that why, or ask those questions, or let them answer, because if you just sit there, you'll find we found ourselves just bumping heads with, you know, and it's like, she's this big, and it's like, how are we bumping heads with her? She's, you know, third of my size. But I think it's just cultivating that, and like you said, understanding that this is a gift, and how do you use that to your advantage and build that up rather than tear it down.
And I want to jump one thing on top of it. The thing I wanted to add to that is that I think for us, we just looked at each of them as having that thing that really can frustrate you sometimes might actually be their superpower. It was like, we realized one day, one of our kids is like super into like justice for himself. Like, well, now I know I outed him, didn't I, by saying himself, because I only have two. And, but like that justice, we realized like we don't want to like break it down where it's like you're not trying to like be justified all the time. We want you to actually care about justice, and we just need to redirect it in the right direction. And so it's not just like strong-willed, but like every kid has something that's like, it could get under your skin, but that might be the thing that like makes them amazing. So
Jenny, we need a little more practicals on what a sex talk with an 8-year-old looks like. People want to know.
Okay. We had some books. I actually liked, I mean, I can answer that later, but we had like a little series of books that we liked. The first one was just about like bodies and boys and girls and how they're different. And then the next one was more like, this is how babies are made. And once we went through the books with them, like we gave them the books. It wasn't like, you couldn't read this on your own. You couldn't have access to this. It was a short talk. Like with an 8-year-old, you're like, this is what happens. They look at you with either utter disgust or nothing. It's one of those things. They'll look at you and be like, have you done that since me? Like in this house?
where was I?
Yeah. Or they'll just be like, I'm done now. And then as long as you're like Teflon, they'll ask you something else later. Yeah. I don't know. That's the most practical I got.
That's good.
That's good.
How do you navigate screen time?
Well, since ours are so little, we're just really intentional, and I'm just gonna be honest, I use it sometimes like when I need it, because if it's like an hour window, I know I need them to leave me alone because I have to answer emails or do something. Okay, yay, you get your screen time right now. And so we break them out. We, again, they're smaller, so we can put them away, and they know that's like where it is. But yeah, I think I just use it intentionally. And sometimes like another smaller window to unwind. So I balance it with like go outside and play. And then other times, like, you can have a little screen time.
Well, we have teenagers and they think they live in a prison if we take their phones. One of my teens had a conversation with me recently, and he was like, well, I think it's kind of like mean that you guys don't let us be on our phones all day, because we often tell them, like, you can't be on your phone, you need to go outside, go play basketball, do something. So when we had the conversation with him, I just, my other kids were listening. I said, well, let me see what you're looking at, and if you're okay with it and it's like something I'm gonna approve of, then it's fine for like an hour, but we want you to get out there, especially because we just moved here, so we want you to be active and going to play basketball. And so even though he didn't like my answer, he's okay with it. So we try to be more aware, because they aren't small. They are teenagers. So sometimes we'll say, like, okay, you can be on the PS5 for 2 hours, or you can be on your phone for an hour or whatever, but let's meet in the middle. If you do this, then afterwards you're gonna go outside and go swimming or play basketball or something like that. So that's how we kind of have set up that boundary for them, and they're usually pretty okay with it.
Yeah, and just one practical kind of nerdy answer, and this is where that bucket of safety, right, comes in. I've just set our network to shut down between certain hours, and their devices just don't work. So,
If I just add one thing, it's kind of confusing to us because we celebrated the fact they could pour their own cereal at one point and turn the TV on. So appreciate you in the back. So now it's like, hey, we don't want you on your phones, but it was a celebration, like, oh, good, like we could sleep an extra hour, they could pour their own cereal. But I think what it is just setting times. I think if we start to notice a little more, so I don't know it's as rigid as, hey, it's more of a, hey, if we're noticing you're spending more time on the phone and not with us, we're gonna throw the flag and say, hey, you know what, come downstairs and watch a movie with us, or hey, let's go outside. When we were really intentional this year on picking up stuff that they can play with outside, whether that was, life-size bowling ball pins that they can do in the backyard. It was just little stuff like that where it was like, instead of buying that video game, it was more like, let's buy the basketball hoop. So that was we kind of play it by ear. Some kids are really good at it. Some kids we got to have the conversation with and give them more structure. But that's pretty much how we do it.
It's good. Okay, last question. You guys, there's so many we couldn't get to. I'm so sorry. This is intense but good. How do you parent and navigate, like, talking to your kids about things like racism, like wars that are going on, like the intensity of what we're dealing with all the time, growing up in a culture where there's just so many hard things? How do you find the balance of, like, protecting your kids from things that aren't age appropriate, but also helping them really understand and have a heart for justice issues and how to walk and navigate those things? Ending on a nice hard note.
Yeah, so I think the question kind of starts with, do you understand it, right? And so, if you feel like you can, so one of the things that that we think about it when at work in my professional setting is, can you explain something in third grade English? That's always the question, right? And this is the same thing. So, can you explain what's happening with Israel and Palestine right now in third grade English? Like, what are the root issues that matter to the core, kind of similar to your prayer, honestly. It's like, do you have that understanding? And if you don't, maybe do some work to get it for yourself. Because then you find that a lot of these things that seem complicated are a lot simpler at a very core human level than we make them out to be. And then the kids will understand. Kids can understand a lot more than we give them credit for. They're not like this different species of living thing. They're humans. They're just don't have the exposure or the history that we have. So just try to find a way to, boil it down to its simplest, love-centered, God-centered perspective. The kids will get it.
Anybody else?
I mean, I think one thing with that too is going back to the like not being afraid to talk to them about sex. It was a similar kind of thing with this, where it's like just not being an open door and being willing to answer questions, but also we have a good kind of relationship with them that they know that there's probably a point where we're going to not answer a certain part of a question because we're protecting them from something or whatever that might be. So they've come to trust us and know that like we can ask you anything and we'll give you an answer to it, but there might be like a certain part of this information that you don't really need to know right now, and so we're going to like you can trust us that we'll give you that information when the time is right. And so like that took time to kind of build a relationship with them where they could trust that we were giving them the information they needed to know right now about whatever.
And it's an ongoing conversation too,
Yeah.
to your point. You know, the issue today is connected to the issue that happened last week, connected to the issue that's going to happen next year. So you're actually really talking to them about justice and these issues over a lifetime. This is not just one conversation. So knowing if you made a mistake, it's cool. You have grace to clean that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that too in our family of not like our dinner table being a place where having a lot of different people sharing a lot of different opinions, about things, and letting our kids hear that from an early age, and getting kids involved in being a part of the solution. Here's how you can be a part of the solution. I know at first I would be afraid of like, oh, I don't know that I want my kids to know about this thing or whatever, but realizing the correct amount of exposure and letting them be a part of healing, being a part of, caring for people in that community or whatever, was actually really maturing for my kids and really healthy in their development. And so I found that it was better to let them see and get involved versus kind of just hiding them from it. Yeah. And then they're, more of the orange pumpkins helping lead those conversations at school with all these little green pumpkins who think they know stuff. It's true, it's true. Because then if your kid if you've had these conversations, then they can help when those, those conversations are happening. So you guys, I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys so much. So grateful. So grateful.